against attacks that are bound to come my way when you write a book like this. Well, you know, you're a racist, you've got sinister intentions, you're a neo-Confederate, which is like the Southern Poverty Law Center favorite term and all that. So the idea of the video is that I'm being interviewed, and it's so beautifully done because I had a great media guy. The idea is that I'm being interviewed by a zombie who has his own television talk show, and he interviews authors. And he has me on, and the beautiful thing is I also got a professional voiceover guy who's done a lot of audiobook reading, and he's done a lot of radio work, who happens to be a libertarian. So he did this for me as a favor, and I sent him a little gift. So he's got a beautiful voiceover. Welcome to Interview with a Zombie. So it almost seems like a real show. And as the lights come up, you got me and this zombie, and we're sitting there like drinking coffee. But of course, being a zombie, he's a little bit unsteady, so his head keeps kind of falling down, whatever. So we decide, now, the zombie is my friend Bob Murphy. Now, Bob is a PhD economist. And I was talking to him one day saying, Bob, I got to do this video where I'm being interviewed by a zombie, and every time I make a substantive point, all he can do is just throw out some left-wing smear term. Like, I mean, I keep making arguments, and he won't make an argument back. He just tries to ruin me and throw insults at me. I said, but I can't think of anybody to be the zombie. And he's sitting there going, you know, come on now. And I would pretty much step over my own grandmother to have a chance to be in this zombie video. So sure enough, so we did it, and we decided sort of arbitrarily at the beginning, the zombie can say only one word at a time, for whatever reason. So how is he going to start off an interview about a book? So he holds up the book and just says, book. And then I sort of give an overview of the book and talk about it. And then he pauses and realizes, wait a minute, I've got some kind of extremist on my show. And he points at me and says, neo-Confederate. And then it just goes on like this. So I make, well, actually, no, it's not really a Confederate thing because, you know, and then it's slavery. And I say, well, actually, nullification was not ever used to defend slavery, but, and then so on and on. So I keep answering, and all he can do is throw these words. And so by the end, you know, we sort of reach the end of our rope. All he's doing is throwing out words. And I just finally, with disgust, I say, all right, that's it. I mean, if you're not even going to use your brain. And he says, brains, and then chases me off the set. And then as I'm being chased off, the voiceover comes back on and says, you've been watching Interview with a Zombie. I mean, so then after it's all over, if you watch it, make sure and watch to the last frame. Because otherwise you miss a cute thing that my video guy did. Then the book cover comes up, a few websites come up, and it's a little music. It's a Mozart concerto actually that's playing. So perfect, right? And then as the website's on the screen, everything, the thing that people miss because they assume it's all over is that the zombie's head pops back onto the screen one last time, and he said, because now the book cover is on the screen, the zombie's head comes back on, and he says, book, and then goes back down. The first 2 times we tried doing this, and he said book, I laughed so hysterically. I mean, so hysterically for so long. And I said, I'm so sorry. I said, I can't remember the last time I laughed this hard. When was the last time I laughed this hard? And Bob said, the last time you were being interviewed by a zombie? And I said, yeah, maybe it was. So fine. So actually, I want to dig out the clips of me laughing, because I mean, it was really, really bad. But so the nice thing is that when we put this video up, a couple things followed from this. One was I got a lot of responses saying, hey, that's a really great video, but how did you ever get Chris Matthews to interview you like that? But the second one was, it is working just the way I hoped. There's a guy who sort of attacked me using one of these. I mean, this is the way that a lot of times on the left they operate. And I don't mean all people on the left. I mean, there are some honorable people who will actually engage you in argument. But I've had a lot of bad experiences, so I sometimes tend to generalize. And they just want to destroy you. Instead of arguing with you, they just want to destroy you by throwing these career-destroying words at you. So one guy was doing this to me, but only thankfully on his Facebook page. This is a guy, I don't want to mention his name, but he served as a minor official. He served as a minor official at least in the Reagan White House. And then, at first he was an Austrian, sort of. He doesn't have any economics training, but he was sort of an Austrian. He was with Ron Paul. Then he jumped off of that ship because he saw the supply siders were where it was at, so he went with that. Then he jumped off that ship and wrote a book criticizing George Bush, and now he proudly says that he voted for Obama. Some of you may know who this guy is. Doesn't matter. The point is that this is a guy who, in other words, has spent his whole life trying to be loved. Whatever's popular, that's what I want to latch onto. And here he is now, approaching 60. He's still not loved, and he spends half his time arguing with people half his age on Facebook. I mean, it's a sad story. So he attacks me. What happens in the comments section? Immediately, people start posting the link to this video and saying, "Zombie!" And they're going, "What?" Like the guy doesn't know what hit him. Like all of a sudden, and so now it's gotten to the point where the term neo-Confederate has been completely defanged. Like you just laugh when you hear it. So you immediately think about the zombie, right? Like it doesn't even work anymore. All right. Anyway, I wanted to mention here you the zombie. Did you have a question? I'm sorry for that long thing, but I had to mention it.
Yeah. What about states nullifying, not based on unconstitutional laws, but just because they don't like the law, such as what South Carolina did with the tariffs?
Yeah, okay. So the question is, what about the situation in which states are nullifying just because they happen not to like something, and not so much because of the constitutionality? Well, I mean, here, here you're faced with two questions. You're faced with a moral question and a constitutional question. I mean, the moral question, I mean, I have no moral problem with people nullifying things they just happen not to like, in the same way that, strictly speaking, legally, anybody who's ever engaged in civil disobedience was legally wrong. But there are many people we honor who engage in civil disobedience, so we know that just the letter of the law is not the end of the question. In the case of South Carolina, I mean, as you know, they did try to advance a constitutional argument, and Calhoun, as well as others, tried to argue that the clear differential impact of the tariffs made them not conducive to the general welfare, and therefore that was one argument that was used against their constitutionality. But at least they at least made an argument, and so at that point, if a state is really because they did claim it was a constitutional question, well, then there needs to be some kind of meeting of the minds between the states and the federal government, the other states, and sort of gather what is the consensus of the states on this matter. And so what I would like to see done that would sort of address issues like this would be a supplement to nullification, which would be this, which would be, and I already feel like I was too timid in the book. I look back on it and I say, this is only like a few months ago, and I already feel I was being too timid. I put in there this proposal that if 2/3 of the states declare that they believe a federal law is unconstitutional, then it's repealed. Well, why 2/3? You know, why? I mean, of course, I'd like it to be just one, but that's never going to go. Well, why not just a simple majority? How about 26? 26 states say a law is unconstitutional, even if they're wrong. If they say it's unconstitutional, it's repealed. Then, you know, a lot of times people say, well, if we amend the Constitution, which can be done by Congress introducing the amendment, if we amend the Constitution, you know, they're not going to listen to that any more than they listen to the Constitution now. But if it's a structural change, that can make a difference, because right now the states, because of the 17th Amendment, have kind of lost their ability to resist the federal government. That they don't have a representation in the federal government. What's the point of having a Senate and a House of Representatives if they're both elected the same way? It's just redundant. Why don't they just merge them into one giant thing? It's pointless. So this would sort of restore to the states some kind of negative on the federal government. And given that right now, basically, you could say it's not absolutely true, but it's a pretty good generalization, nothing is ever repealed, I think we could get some things repealed. I think we could get 26 states voting to repeal some federal laws. And the way the states do it could differ by state. You could have, some states could say, if our Attorney General, because I said this on Freedom Watch, if 26 Attorneys General declare a federal law, but even then I think I misspoke. I should have said, that should be up to the state too. It could be a popular referendum, it could be the state legislature, it could be the Attorney General. Whatever method each state decides is fine. But if 26 of them say a federal law is unconstitutional, then regardless of the merits of their argument, it goes. I think that's at least something that we could, you know, I don't think a majority of the population would go for that right now, but if you kept arguing for it, I think we could actually get some traction with that, and that would, I think, actually change things somewhat. I think it would change things somewhat. And just one more quick point.